Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This is part 2 of the Teams series. Today, we have a session on a deep dive into Teams live events. This is Hassan Mohseni. I'm the program manager for Microsoft Reactor in Abu Dhabi. Microsoft Reactors, as you know, are hubs for founders and developers to meet, learn, and connect to local peers, as well as industry-leading ideas and technology from Microsoft partners and the open source community. It's also home to the Microsoft for Startups program. With a diverse mix of hands-on workshops, expert panels, and community events, there's something for everyone. Check out our calendar of events on meetup.com and join our coming sessions. Our speaker today is Lee Ford. Lee is a Microsoft MVP and a solution architect for Symity based in Birmingham, UK. Lee works with customers, helping them transition to Microsoft Teams alongside other technologies such as Azure, PowerShell, and Power Platform. Feel free to ask questions during today's session, and I'd love to hand over the mic to our speaker to start the session.
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction, Hassan. So I will start the presentation. And we'll get started. So as I was introduced, my name is Lee Ford. I'm a solution architect based in the UK, a Microsoft MVP, and traditionally work with technologies such as Microsoft Teams, Azure, PowerShell, and the like. And today, a lot of the content I'm going to be presenting was being produced with these content contributors. So they massively helped out on the content that's in this slide. So I thought I'd call them out right at the beginning, and that's Amanda Sterner, Megan Strand, and Chris Webb. So this is a series of events around Microsoft Teams. And this is the second of 5. So previously there's best practices on meetings. Today we're talking about live events. And in the future we've got security and compliance, organizing events, and best practices for presenters. So let's get started on the next one. So what are Teams live events? So that's a question that we're going to cover. Another question we're going to cover is when to use Teams live events, and then we're going to go through the life cycle of a live event. So sort of before the organization of it, the pre, you've got the during, so how you work a live event, and then also how you afterwards handle a live event, so sharing the content as such. And we'll go through little bit more beyond the basics of the live event, and then we'll have a Q&A session at the end if there's any questions. So what are Teams live events? So Teams live events are effectively an extension of the Microsoft Teams traditional meetings, where you would have, say up to 250, I think it might be 300 now, participants in a meeting, and that's more of a collaborative experience, whereas this is more for producing an event and casting it out, a webinar as such. And as such, it can be much larger capacity, so going from around 300 up to 10,000, with an increase now up to 20,000, and the duration has gone from 4 hours to 16 hours. You can have up to 10 presenters, so that means you can effectively flip content between 10 different people within the same live event. You're not stuck to one person presenting the slide and that's it. You can change presenters on the fly. There's a Q&A module, and you can also record the meeting to stream. So the increases I'll just cover quickly. They've gone from 10,000 to 20,000. Durations increased, as well as the concurrent live events within a tenant. That is effectively a free increase up until through to October 1st, and then from October 1st there'll be a Teams advanced communications license that you will need to purchase for the person that's going to be organizing the live event. So there's only always one organizer in a live event, so whoever's going to effectively create the live event, they need to have that license if you want to go above those limits of 10,000 and 16 hours. So when do you use Teams live events? There's different capabilities of a live event compared to a Teams meeting. So just because they could produce more attendees doesn't necessarily mean that, oh yeah, okay, that's what we need to do. There's different criteria. So for example, if you want to have a collaboration session or have a voice conversation or do screen sharing between multiple attendees, then the live events isn't going to be for you. That's a meeting really you want to be using there. Same with if you want to do any chat. So there is a Q&A module in this, but it's not intended as a chat room as such. So as you look here, there is some overlap, but ultimately a webinar is kind of what a live event is used for, broadcasting to a large amount of people or maybe a small amount of people, but in a webinar style setting with producers and Q&A and everything like that, whereas a meeting is a traditional meeting. And then on sort of as an aside, that there is like a third option, which is using live events with external applications such as OBS that give you extra flexibility on how you handle it. So you can use more advanced video equipment or record the content into a particular format or anything like that. There's ways to do that with additional software such as OBS. So let's go through the Teams live event life cycle. We have three stages. We have the pre-live event, which is the organization of the live event and testing and validation and like a dry run, make sure everything's going to work. And then you've got the actual live event happening. And then you've got the post-live event, which is once the live event's over, how you handle the live event. Just because it ends doesn't mean you're going to finish with it. You can do a few actions at the end. So we'll go with stage one, which is the pre-live event. And there's three topics that we need to cover here. It's understanding roles within a live event. So we'll touch on it in a second, but ultimately you assign different type of roles to people who are going to be part of the live event. Then you actually schedule a live event once you've understood what everyone's role is going to be. And then you've got the preparation and rehearsal to make sure the live event's going to be a success before you start the live event. So what I recommend is you don't schedule a live event and 2 minutes before you're about to start, kick off the live event. You need to be there early, make sure everything works, make sure no one's got any issues with equipment or you can't join the meeting or something like that. You need to be doing rehearsal. So we'll touch on the roles in live events first. So there's 4 distinct roles within live events, and that they are quite different. So I'll just cover one each individually. So the first one is an organizer, and that's the single individual that creates the live event or organizes the live event. And part of that, they can set what an attendee can and can't do. They can select whether you're going to use OBS or other external production equipment, or whether you're going to produce it purely within Teams live event. Adding options such as transcription or Q&A, inviting attendees, or it's anonymous, creating an attendee link and getting that ready to send out to everyone. And then you've also got event group members, which are effectively the other roles within a live event. So that's effectively organizing the ability to who can do what within the live event. So let's just move over. The second role is a producer, and that's effectively the individual or individuals that are sort of producing the event. So they're kind of selecting whose camera to focus on, or whose content's being presented, and potentially introducing the presenter. So the producer generally sits in the background most of the time, but they're effectively connecting it all together and producing the session to make sure there's no issues. And then you have a presenter, and the presenter is effectively what I'm doing now. So I'm talking, presenting my desktop, and I could be presenting video as well. And essentially, that's the bulk of it being a presenter. You don't have to know about the layouts and who's showing what video, that's all the role of the producer. The presenter ultimately just turns up and talks. It could be the same person as the producer ultimately, but it's that they are different roles. And then the final role is an attendee, and that's just someone who's viewing the content, and they can view it live or on demand, using the Teams client, or if that's been exported to a file, then that can be uploaded to YouTube or wherever else. So that's the 4 roles. And what we'll do is we'll kind of show you the different roles here. So now we've got the organizer, so organizing a live event. So effectively what you have here is you, as the organizer, you'd be in Teams and you would select calendar, and then you'd go to new live events. And then you put in the information about what the live event's called, the location of the live event, and on the right-hand side there, you have, if it stops animating, you've got the organizer. You can also invite presenters into the group. Next, and ultimately at that point you have some extra settings that you can set on the live event. So you can determine whether it's an organization-wide event, so only people within your organization that have to sign in can view it. It can be people in groups where it's tied down to a very small number, or maybe a large number, but a group of specific people within your organization. And then you have a public, which is where it's open to guest users or unauthorized users that don't sign in to use to see the live event. So that's kind of a typical webinar like we are today, where you're not having to be required to sign in to view this presentation. And then the final question is around how you're producing it. So are you making a recording available to attendees? Are you enabling captions? Are you creating a report so you can determine how many people viewed the event? And are you giving the ability for people to provide a Q&A session, or you should say ask questions for a Q&A? And then additionally, you can also do an external app or device where you're then pushing this out to OBS or some other application. So when you schedule a live event, it sends it out to the team members. So these are the organizers, producers and presenters. It doesn't send it out automatically to attendees. So what you would do is you would click the Get Attendee link, and that will give you a URL. And with that URL, you can then send that out via email or however you want to surface that out to your attendees. So before you start the live event, as I touched on earlier, it's a good idea to do a dry run or a test run, maybe 2 or 3 times, just to make sure that you're familiar with the live event. If it's your first live event, like I say, you don't want to turn up 2 minutes before the event's due to start and running into issues. So what you need to be doing is you can join that live event, or 2 hours, 3 hours, 2 days before the event's due to start, and effectively do a dry run. Confirm things like you've got good lighting, if the camera's good, more importantly, the audio is good in the room, and you can then effectively make sure it's going to work. Now, what you can't test is the live event going live unless you click start. The problem is once you click start, you can't end the live event and then start it again later on. So once you click start, that's it. So wouldn't recommend doing that. So as you'll see later on, there's different stages to a live event. You've got a live, and then you've got a start. As soon as you click start, it's actually broadcast to the attendees. But what you can do from an attendee point of view is you can click the link and just make sure it takes you to the landing page of the live event, and it will say the live event hasn't started. It at least gives you an idea that, okay, yeah, everything's working. All I need to do is click start on the actual time of the event. So we've got everything organized. The next stage is during the Teams live event. And there's 3 parts that I'd like to touch on, which is 1, producing the live event, best practices when you're producing it, and then how attending the live event works. So top tips for producing is follow a run sheet. It can get quite hectic. There's quite a few button clicks, and especially if you're producing and maybe presenting or introducing someone for the first time, it might be a bit overwhelming. So what I would do is do a dry run, maybe even in a live event that's not this live event, the live event you're actually going to produce, and almost write down a to-do list or a run sheet and just go through it. Yep, done that, and just tick it off as you go. Otherwise, you may end up sending it live too early or not producing the right content. So that's a recommendation. Another one is pay attention. So ultimately everything should work and there should be no issues, but try to keep focused on the live event. Don't try and multitask and look at emails or look at your mobile just in case maybe there's an issue with one of the presenters and their content's not showing or something like that. You want to be able to be on top of it. So another role when you're producing is kind of a moderator role. Really, it's not a defined role, but ultimately, if you're producing, you're probably also keeping an eye on the Q&A feed. If there's any Q&As that maybe need to be brought up during the session, then keep an eye on them is key. That they don't get missed, and then maybe it would have been better for them to be asked during the presentation rather than at the end. Don't try and flick between the presenters. So if you've got, say, 2 or 3 presenters, it's not an instant transition. So if you've got 2 or 3 presenters, don't kind of keep flicking between them, because it will get quite messy and can be quite fiddly to do. What I'd recommend is you have sessions for each presenter. So let's say there's an hour presentation and each person's got 20 minutes of content. You would kind of stagger, just do one after the other rather than cutting it up into little bits, because it will be quite complex. So when you're producing PowerPoints, make sure that you're producing a full screen, not in the PowerPoint inside the PowerPoint application, because it can look quite small once it's sent out via a live event, especially if you've got video along with that. And as a producer, make sure that you've hopefully got a separate device that you can join as an attendee, just to make sure that the live event is proceeding as you expect it is. Because obviously when you're in the live event producing it, you're only seeing what you're producing, but it's always good to know that what's actually being beamed out to the attendees is what you expect. So the act of actually producing the live event, we'll go through that now. So it's kind of like running a TV channel. Well, maybe it probably isn't, but it's what I imagine it to be. It's you've got a lot of content. You've maybe got 3 or 4 different presenters with different content and 3 or 4 maybe video feeds, and you're kind of lining up the next scene or the next shot or slab of content, and effectively what you're doing there is kind of getting it all ready and then flicking it live. So it's quite fun actually. So to join a live event, if you've been assigned the producer role, you effectively join it like you would any other Teams calendar invite. So you click the join link. You can make sure that your microphone camera is set correctly just before you join the event. You can always change it afterwards, but it's ultimately gives you the option. So so when you join as a producer, you effectively need the Teams desktop app. You can't join via the web. So if you're for example, in this session here, I had to make sure that I was using the full Teams app. So I had to sign up my my traditional login and log in as a different account. Whereas if I wasn't doing a live event, I might have just opened up in a web browser. So that's just something to be cognizant of. Another one is you can't blur your background. So if you're used to blurring your backgrounds in typical Teams meetings or having a custom background, fortunately you can't do that. And recommendation, if you're producing in Teams, try to turn on your camera. So even if it's not being sent live, at least it's with other presenters. So second one is, second slide on this is kind of just going through the different stages of setting up the live event. So on the left-hand side, we have, you've sort of say on the Teams client here, we've got two boxes. We've got the queue and then we've got the live event. The queue effectively is not what's sent live. That's just like teeing up or queuing up the next slab of content, which could also be the live if you're only doing one sort of presentation, one type of content. You might need to do this multiple times, but ultimately what you're doing here is you're selecting video and or content that appears in the queue, and then when you're ready to send live, you would click the send live button, and then this picture here would move across over to here and replace this gentleman. So effectively that is sending the content live. So at this stage, it isn't actually live as in live to the attendees. It's live as in that's what's being sent from all the content that's being kind of amalgamated into the Teams live event, but it's not actually being broadcast. So it's kind of ready to go at the click of a button, but it's not actually live. Now, as soon as you click start over here, so we've sent this content live over to here. As soon as you click start, at that point, it is live and it is being beamed out to attendees. And once you've clicked start, you can't click stop, or you can, but it will then end the event for that whole event, and it won't be able to start it again. So send live, click start, ready to go. We're all good. Just a few notes. It's 720p, so it's not going to be a 4K or 1080p high fidelity. It's not built that way. It's intended to be streamed out to tens of thousands of users. It's not going to be sent out at ridiculously high resolution. Another tip is any producers or presenters that aren't part of the presentation or actively speaking, would ask them to mute their audio so that they're not sent out to attendees, because that is a common oversight in that, because you're not the sort of, your content isn't being shown or your video is not being shown, then effectively you're not live, but you are your microphone is hot, so to speak. So you need to make sure that you're muting it if you're not presenting. There is a bit of a delay on this as well, so that's just something to factor in, that if you're trying to run something that needs to be instantaneous, I'm not sure what that would be, but ultimately if there's something you're expecting for attendees to get immediately, then that isn't going to happen. There is 15 to 60 second delay between you talking and that it ending up on the end of the attendee's machine. So there is a bit of delay going on. So this is something to bear in mind. If you do start the live event, but then no content is being shown, the live event does not end, and that's intentional. It could be that one of the presenters has dropped off the internet, or maybe you're switching between presenters or something like that. If there's no content being shown, then the attendees will get the live event resume in a minute, which means that sorry, in a moment, that the content is, there's more content coming. The event hasn't ended, but it's not currently going on. I think I've touched on this already, but if you're a producer in the event, especially if you're the sole producer in the event, recommended you use multiple monitors or only share a specific window. And I was talking around checking the attendee feed, but also it's useful that if you've got a single monitor and you're also presenting, you don't want people to see your Teams client because it doesn't look great. So what you're better off doing is either sharing just, let's say, the PowerPoint window, for example, or have the Teams client on a separate screen and share the screen that won't have the Teams client on. And share a desktop, it's actually really easy. You effectively, where it has share your camera down here, you also have share content, and you click share and away you go. So to ask a presenter to join a live event and if they're in the list, you can effectively invite them straight away, and it will show you that, the participants that they've already been invited, and kind of by asking them to join, it's kind of sending them a notification to go, oh, by the way, you're meant to be in this live event. Can you join now, please? If they're not in the list, then you can search for them and locate them and go, oh yeah, actually I forgot to put so and so on the list. They need to be in this live event. I'll quickly add them. Search for their name, click join, ask to join, and they will get the event. A couple of last little bits. To end the event, if I go back here, you just click end. Very simple. And like I said earlier, once a live event ends, it cannot be restarted. So be careful. Don't, if you're trying to run an all-day event, use these this way. You're not presenting any content. So the live event is still running, but it's not got any content on, rather than clicking end, because once you've ended the event, that's it, done for the day. So best practices for producing, one of them is planning. So as I said earlier, run several events as rehearsals, even the event that you're actually going to use. Maybe join that early, make sure everything is going to work. Become familiar with the whole thing, know what buttons do, know the difference between a queue, something in the queue and something being sent live, and then starting the live event, and then maybe transitioning from one presenter to the other, loading up the content into the queue for that person and then sending that live. That's something you really need to, if you're going to do a lot of them, you need to be familiar with what you're doing. Ideally, you want more than one producer at the event. There could be an issue if something crops up, maybe their internet drops, or they've got an emergency they need to attend to, or something like that, or maybe their computer's rebooted or something. Try and have more than one producer, just in case it becomes a problem. Because if it's only presenters left in the live event, that they don't have any controls to end it or change any content or anything like that. So yeah, try and have more than one producer, or at least have one on standby. Another top tip is using custom links, something like a bit.ly for the attendee join link. And this is useful in that if, like I was mentioning earlier, you end a live event by accident, if you're using a custom link like a bit.ly, you can then potentially organize a new live event in the background and point the link at the new live event, so you're not then having to send out a new link to everyone that's an attendee. They effectively just click the link like they did, and they wouldn't be any the wiser that it's now going to a different live event link than the one before. Have your event group, so that's your producers and your presenters and organizers, join 30 minutes ahead of time. Make sure you can all get in, maybe share a slide with an intro or a placeholder, or first slide in a deck, just something that the event will begin soon. So that means people that are joining early know that they're in the right place. So the idea is that you would join early, 30 minutes early, present a slide that says it's going to start soon or something like that, and then actually send start the event, send it live, start the event, maybe 10 minutes or so. So you have these early joiners at least know that they're going to be there and they're at the right event. And another tip is to leave all audio muted until you're ready to go, and then only unmute as you're required. And in advanced live events, we're talking high production value ones, make sure you've got a list of roles and responsibilities, and that these aren't just the roles within a producer or a presenter, but actually within the event team. Go, okay, I'm going to be doing this bit, you're going to be doing that bit, and we'll do this at that time, and kind of just organize it a bit better than just having one or two producers and go from there. So another tip is around audio. So don't ignore audio. It's probably the most important part of a live event or any meeting, really. As long as you can hear someone and listen to what they're talking about, that's probably most of the most important part. So if the screen quality isn't great, at least you can hear the person and they can explain it. It may be enough. Whereas if you can't hear what the person's saying, then it's game over. Really, it doesn't really go over well. So make sure you've got a really good audio setup. So have a good microphone. So if you're going to use a computer or another device, make sure you're using a Teams certified headset. And I see this all the time, people presenting with the Bluetooth headphones that aren't Teams certified, or other Bluetooth or other wired headsets that aren't Teams certified, and they may work, they may be fine, they may be fine for most of the event, and then all of a sudden start playing up, and at that point it's really hard to then troubleshoot the issue whilst you're trying to present it. It really does disrupt the event. So try and use something that's certified if you can. Don't try and use AirPods. If it's using in-room audio, so you're using sort of it's a more business setting rather than producing from home, make sure that that audio equipment does work, and there's no echo or anything like that before the live event starts. So this is kind of more high-end specific audio requirements, but if you're using any audio capture device like an XLR connector, make sure that it's going to be balanced, so it's not going to sound terrible. And the final point is around using high-end AV. So this is visual as well as audio, making sure that the equipment that you're using for HDMI is going to be up to the job. So these ones around video, probably not as relevant really during COVID. This is more around high production value live events, rather than obviously at the moment most people are going to be presenting from home, or the expectation that you're going to produce a high budget event with really nice camera angles and lighting probably isn't that relevant at the moment, but we'll touch on these are the ideals really. So try and make sure that the subject, i.e. the person more likely, is well lit. So try and get as much light into the shot as possible. So that the brighter it looks, the more sort of high production value it looks, and yeah, that's going to come across on the event quite well. It goes into using 3 different lights. Like I say, probably not that relevant during COVID, but it's making sure that you're getting the best shot possible. And there's talks around if you're using a prosumer camera, you can use HDMI inputs and use that as a camera at home rather than maybe a webcam that isn't going to give you as good quality. So another one is sharing. If you're the sole event producer and sharing content, it's recommended to use 2 monitors. I've touched on this already, that you don't really want people seeing how you're producing a live event during the live event. It's going to be a bit strange for them to see. So you're better off having the content in one monitor and all the other applications on the other monitor, so you don't end up just getting notifications and the Teams app and everything in the way of the presentation. So Teams Live Events uses what they call video-based screen sharing, or VBSS, which is used to present the content that you're producing. It's video-based rather than sort of traditional screen sharing technology. But you need to make sure that you've got the screen sharing mode set up in Teams. Now, the default is that it is set up, but this is just pointing out that if there is issues, then checking the screen sharing mode and IP video are set to enabled rather than none in your Teams settings, Teams meeting settings. So last one around the best practice in producing is the configuration. So as I touched on earlier, creating a live event, you need to have the title, the date, the location, the description, and ideally as detailed as possible. You need to get a list of all people that are going to be producing and presenting, including any Q&A moderators that will be fielding the questions. And the attendees, you don't need to send them, you don't need to add them to the live event organization. You can do that at the end. You get an attendee link. And like I say, maybe wrap that in a bit.ly or something like that that makes it not so obvious what they're joining. So you can choose a Q&A if you want to have one. So if you select a Q&A, you need to make sure that someone's on hand to field those questions and moderate it. And to do that, you need to make them either a producer or a presenter so that they have visibility of that. If they're joining as an attendee, they will only be able to see the questions that the producer or presenter have made public. If you want to make a recording available to attendees, you need to select that before the meeting starts or the event starts. So the next part is the attending a Teams live event. So we've had the producing and the top tips for producing, and now we've got the what an attendee can and can't do and how it works for them. So as an attendee of a live event in Teams, you can watch the live event and participate in the moderated Q&A. So if you've got the Teams client, if you open up the meeting invite or the link within Teams, it will join the event in your Teams client that's already running. If you open it from Outlook, it will give you the option to either join from the web browser or open the event up in the Teams client. I would always recommend, if you've got the Teams client, using that. It gives, certainly in my experience, a slightly better experience, but you can do either. As I've mentioned at the start, the difference between a live event and a Teams meeting is a live event. You can't, the attendees don't have video or audio sharings. They can only receive the video and the audio from the presenters. So this is kind of a top tip, really. Before watching a live event, make sure your browser allows third-party cookies, which most do, and it supports Microsoft Teams and the Azure Media Player. To be honest with you, as long as you're using something like the new Edge browser or Chrome, which is probably the vast majority of users, then you're good to go. If you join before the live event has started, where the producer hasn't clicked start, you'll see that the live event has not yet started. So like I say, what I would recommend you do is you start the live event just before it's actually going to start with a placeholder, so at least they know that it's going to start soon. So some extra notes around live events that are open to the public. If you're signed into Teams, you will join that live event as the person that you're signed into Teams as. If you're not signed into Teams, so you've never used Teams before or you're not signed in, you'll just join as an anonymous user within the live event. You don't have to be prompted to sign into anything. If you're using the web browser, like I say, use what they call a media source extension enabled browser, something like Chrome or Firefox or Edge. Safari isn't currently supported. I think there's plans for that to become supported, but you're probably better off if you are on a Mac or iOS than trying to use a different browser to join that event. So the Q&A is where that attendees can interact with the producers and presenters through a Q&A. Now, the way it works is attendees can't talk to other attendees. So an attendee, so this view here is from a producer or presenter. So they receive questions that have been sent from the attendees. Now you can either choose to reply directly to that person in a private reply, which is only between the attendee and that producer, or you can publish it, and that effectively makes it public to the whole event. So if it's a question that you're going to talk about, you can publish it, and then anyone else that maybe had that same question can then see the question and the answer detailed in the Q&A. You can also send them anonymously, ask them anonymously. So if you don't want to be named during the Q&A session, you can send it anonymously. At least the moderator will still receive that question, but they're kind of saying it's come from anonymous. Okay. So the final stage is the post Teams live event. So this is once the live event is finished, you have a couple of things you can do with the live event. So you've planned the live event, you've started the live event, you've gone through the live event, everything's worked great. Now the live event, you've clicked end, the live event's finished. There is a couple of things you can do. So you can take the following actions. So you can run an attendee report. So that effectively gives you a listing of all the attendees that attended that. Now, obviously, if it's a public event, some of those may be anonymous, but at least you can get a feel for the engagement. You know, was it 10 participants or was it 10,000 participants? You used to get a feel for how popular that event was. You have a live event recording. So the recording can be only to presenters and producers in the form of an MP4 file, or it can be sent out as an attendee-facing recording. You have Q&A reports that details all the questions and answers that were taken during that event. You can also have a transcript. So if you need to go and look back and see what was said when, by who, you have that. And then as an aside, if you are using an external app to produce the live event, so if they have reporting capabilities built into their app, completely separate to Teams, then obviously that is captured as part of the reporting. I don't know what that is necessarily, but the other four are Teams based reports. So to access reports, you go to the live event in Teams. So you go to the calendar, find the live event that you previously ran, and in here you have the recording. If there was a recording, you have the Q&A report to download, the attendee engagement report, and then you also have recording for attendees, and that's where you can enable or disable the recording to be available to the attendees. If you want to delete all the resources, let's say, you know, for GDPR reasons, or there's, you know, you've already kind of got everything you needed to get out of it, and you don't want it to be kept, you can also delete the reports and the recording and everything from the live event. So another part of the reporting is also sharing the Teams live event. So let's say you've done the Teams live event, everything was great, you finished, and well, actually, you know, there's a request, it'd be good if we could put this onto YouTube or upload it to Stream or you know, whatever other video form, you know, websites, or maybe you just want a local copy. You can then share that content out. So you can join. So if the recording's been in here where you've got recording for attendees, if that's set to enabled, then if someone joins the link after the live event has gone on, they will still have the option to watch the previous live event, you know, the live event recording. So we'll go, oh yeah, sorry, it's not live anymore, but here's the recording of the event if you want to watch it in your own time. You can then also download the live event as a file and then share it using other methods, as I mentioned, such as YouTube or other things. And then the final thing is, so unlike a Teams a Teams meeting, where if you have a meeting and you record the meeting, it then appears in Stream as a automatically, it gets uploaded to Stream as a recording, and then anyone within the has access to Stream can then view that recording. Then you can do the you can upload to Stream anyway. So got some useful links here. So we've got Microsoft Teams community. So we've got the technical Teams community. We've got user voice. If you've got any issues with Teams, or there's suggestions of new features or anything like that, you can push them via user voice. Then you've also got the instructor-led training. You've got the roadmap. So if there is a feature that you're keen to see get added to Teams. Maybe it's already on the roadmap. There's a what's new link, and then there's some technical documentation and adoption toolkits. And just a reminder that Ignite starts tomorrow, and if you want to join, you can join at myignite.microsoft.com. It is free, and I highly recommend you do join. So I think we've got some Reactor links there to Twitter and Meetup and such. And I think it's just the Q&A session now, if there's any questions. Anyone got any questions? Let's have a look. I'll cover these out so we've got one around describe how you add a presenter during the meeting. Would this only work if the organizer had already invited them? So no, you can still invite people within your organization to a live event as a producer or presenter after the initial organization of the event. So if you're in the live event, you have the option to add presenters during the live event that weren't necessarily invited at the time. So if you need to quickly add someone in, you can do that. Oh, well, I didn't add them at the beginning when I organized it 2 weeks ago. No, you still can add them. It's new and existing members. So what sort of accessibility features can you bring forward for any attendees with difficulties for the host as well? So there is captions and transcriptions. I'm not sure if there's anything other than that. I'd have to double check, I'm afraid. I'm pretty sure that's the accessibility. That's all there is for accessibility features at the moment, but I can double check that and come back to you on that one. So what sharing content is possible with attendees, like PDFs and Word documents and PowerPoint, etc. So you can produce, obviously you can share your screen, but as far as actual files to download, there is no facility to do that. So you can't upload a PowerPoint presentation at the end or a PDF or something like that. There is no way to do that. You would have to do that outside of the live event using whatever method you want to, but it's not a live event feature. How can we get the slides? So I believe they'll be uploaded somewhere within the Reactor. I'm not sure exactly where that will be, but I'm sure someone will be able to chip in if they know where that is. And is there a limit on how early producers can join a live event? Could you theoretically join over 1 hour early? So as it stands, I believe there's no limit. So you could join 2 or 3 days before if you wanted. So I know when we were Commsverse, which is a Teams event that was happening a few months ago, 3-4 months ago, there was many live events that were created weeks in advance. And I think one of the jobs was going through each live event weeks or if not days in advance and just making sure that the live event was created properly and it was ready to go. So I'm pretty sure that you can join certainly more than 1 hour early, which I think is the question. I think that's all the questions I can see, unless there's any more. Let me just see. So is a producer equivalent? I've got another question. Is a producer equivalent to an organizer in permissions? So yes, producer from a during the live event, yes, absolutely. It's got the same amount of permissions, and I think you can change some of the live event settings, but where the organizer is there, they're effectively the one that's created like you would in a traditional Teams meeting, where you might organize the Teams meeting, but then you make other people, presenters within that same meeting. They can still do everything. It's a similar thing with a producer and an organizer. The organizer effectively has the overall control. I don't think there's really much in the way of once the live event's been organized, there's much difference really. Let's see if we've got any more questions. We do. Can a live event be added to Outlook calendar with its link? So the way it works is the producers and presenters will receive a live event meeting request in their Outlook, but attendees don't. There's no way to really send out en masse to attendees a live event. What we would recommend is if you're sending it out to a large audience, you would do that via some other method with, like I say, the link to the live event within that email or whatever. But it's not a there's no way of mass sending out thousands of meeting invites to attendees. It has to be done separately to the producer and presenter role. A question here, would you please briefly review how to select which of several video inputs or files to assign to a single queue window? I can try. I'm not sure if I've got a screenshot of that. What do I have? Let me just go back through the slide deck and see if what I can find as far as where's my slide? What we can find. So go through. So here we've got share your camera. Let's do a better one actually. Here we are. Yes, this is probably a good one. So where you've got presenter and you and content, what you have in content is the ability to choose whose content. So when you click the content, you then have, if multiple people, someone, you can kind of pick what content's being shown. So you can only choose one set of content at the time, and you can send it to the queue. So ultimately, the content that's live might be different to the content that's in the queue. So if person A is presenting currently, you can set up the content for person B on the queue, and then at the point that you want to then send it live, you can click send it live, and it will then swap them around. And it's the same for video inputs. So if you've got a particular person that's presenting their content and they've got their video on, you can then also do the same for the second person, have their video and their content teed up, ready to go. So yeah, there's a question around the pause and the play feature. So the way it works is it's effectively like YouTube. So from a attendee's point of view, I don't know if I can actually join this as an attendee, but it would be a bit strange hearing myself. But effectively, it's like a YouTube. So you see the content in a window, and then you just have a pause and a resume, and you can kind of drag the slider, what point you want to go. So you'll have a live, say go to live, but you can kind of rewind it back. So if you join 10 minutes late, you can kind of rewind the live event 10 minutes back and start from that point. So yes, it gives you the ability to do that. Can a live event be accessed via different products such as Skype, Zoom, or etc.? No, so it has to be accessed via Teams, but you don't need the Teams client, and you don't need a Teams account. So if it's a public event, all you need is a web browser. So but there's no way to go, pipe it into Zoom or into Skype. It has to be done from within either via the web browser or the Teams client. There's another question around the accessibility. So I think I've mentioned it already, but there isn't really from a so I know the accessibility features that we do have are captions, and transcripts, but there's no, I don't think there's anything other than that. There's no accessibility features specifically for live events outside of those. Not that I can think of anyway. So can chat be saved from an event? So chat can be saved. So as part of the let's just go back through, the Q&A can be saved. So these questions here and the replies, they are saved in the in the Q&A report. So within the Q&A report, you can download that, and that will list the Q&A. So that's the sort of chat that you can save. Okay. Don't know if there's any more questions. I think we've maybe answered all of them. I think that's everything. Thank you very much. Let's just go back to the final slide there. Okay, we've got one more question sneaking at the last minute. So once a live event is saved, can it be edited? So from a settings point of view, the organizer can go back in and maybe add another presenter, or maybe you didn't get the attendee link at the time you created it. Yes, you can go in at a later date and go through and pick or change the settings of the live event. I think there's certain settings that you can't change. I think maybe the visibility of whether it's a public or a sort of an internal facing or company wide live event, but I think that's about it. So can attendees save the event on their local machines? I don't think so. I think it's embedded in the browser. You might maybe be able to right click and save as, but I don't think it's really a documented feature. I think it's meant to be that the attendee can go with the recording for an attendee isn't like, here's a file, do with what you wish. It's if you go to the link after the Teams live event has been presented, then they can watch it back in a later date. It's not a file, right? Here's the recording, save it. Like I say, it does produce one of those files, but that's only available to the producers and the presenters, and they can then download that MP4 file and upload it, or to wherever they want to. So you could present it that way to attendees, but it's not an automatic feature.
I believe that was the last question. Thank you, Lee, for today's session.
No worries at all.
A quick reminder for our community to join and subscribe, actually, to the email newsletter and to YouTube, where you will be able to watch this session again. Also, you can connect with us on Twitter and check out our calendar of events for the upcoming sessions that are part of the Teams series, as mentioned before. And quick reminder as well about the survey. So I will be sharing with you, actually in the Q&A, there is a link to the survey. The event ID for today's session is 11705. So use it when you are providing us with some feedback about the sessions that you would love to see at the Reactor. And that's all for today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and goodbye.
Thank you.